the end, what may have more significance is my creation of the Institute and what will come out of it.
After he left my office, I pulled down my immunology, basic immunology textbook, and I went to the index and I looked up monocytes and macrophages and I started reading. Because this was an area of which I was not trained, I had no background, I really didn't know anything since what I had learned back in college. So you've got to be open to moving into these areas and finding where the science leads you. Because when you do that, you really come up with something new and something fundamental. Being fearless and moving in a different direction is something that's part of the Salk culture. It is the willingness and even the encouragement not to stay in your lane. From Jonas was as much motivated by having talented, curious people here, people who were interested in lots of different issues in biology, as he was in the particular scientific area that they might be working. And that was his main motivation. That was something that was more important than scientific areas. And that's something that distinguishes the Salk from a lot of other places.
We were all young and enthusiastic, and it was natural for there to be a huge level of interaction and particularly collaboration. There were so many papers that came out in those first few years from 1974 to 1980 that involved collaboration between labs, because we were all had very small labs with only 2 or 3 people in them, and so we could really sort of get a greater bang for our buck by collaborating. And I think that was key, actually, for me. Was I was in the right place at the right time. Without those interactions, I would not have been nearly so successful.
This was an environment where novel ideas were thought. Of course, I mean, this is the Salk Institute. That's what we have, novel ideas. Everybody had them. Nobody thought it was something bizarre. And so when I started working in the field of the functional interaction between the endocrine and the immune system, when the rest of the world seemed to think that it was really bizarre, if not unfortunate, idea, coming from here, I thought, yeah, it's novel, so what else is new? That's why the Salk Institute was founded. That's what we do.
I remember most distinctly having a conversation with Francis Crick, and he said to me, we would like to have you come over here and work with us. We're not hiring you for what you do, for the specific thing that you're doing. We're hiring you for who you are and what you've done. And when you come here, you don't have to do the same thing that you're doing now. You can do anything you want. You can become a plant biologist. This idea that you could switch fields, and you're free to switch fields, and you're not being hired just to do one thing, made a big impact on me.
I came out and visited, and Salk just was so spectacular to me. It was the Salk faculty that really attracted me overall, you know. I still remember having a conversation with Jeff Wall over lunch, you know, about plant telomeres. He was all animated about it. And so I like that about him because, you know, I was actually at Mass General Hospital when I did my postdoc, so we were used to telling people why Mass General Hospital had a plant lab in the genetics department, right? And so I wasn't afraid to come to a place that didn't really have much going on in plants. And I thought I would actually benefit from being at a place where people thought about problems differently than me.
Since my undergraduate years, I've been deeply interested in the question of the origins of life. When I was a graduate student at UCSD, I took Stanley Miller's graduate level course on origins of life. Stanley saw my deep interest in the topic, and he said, you should go over to the Salk Institute and talk to Francis Crick, because, you know, he thinks about these things. So what I did one day was just walk over to the Salk Institute. You know, there weren't the gates and guards then. Just walked in, walked up to Francis's office, saw his admin, and said, "Hi, I'm Gerald Joyce. I'm a graduate." And she said, "Oh, he's down on the patio having lunch. You can just go down there." I had never met him before, and I introduced myself and told him about my interest in how life began. And Francis says, "Oh, my dear boy, no, I don't think about that anymore. I think about the brain. You want this man here, Leslie Orgel." And Leslie, I think, did everything he could not to roll his eyes, but looked in pain because I think I looked kind of shaggy. But he agreed to an appointment with me, which I made with his admin, came back, I don't know, some number of days later, told him about my interests. And he said, well, I can see you're on the track, but you're at the very beginning of the track. And he basically dismissed me. Time went by, so Stanley said, you know, let me make a phone call on your behalf. Lo and behold, that got me a second appointment with Leslie Orgel. I came back for the second appointment. I'm not sure he even remembered the first one. And he said, you'd be welcome to do a rotation in my lab at the Salk Institute. And it kind of went from there. It was the best time of my life, was being a graduate student in Leslie Orgel's lab at the Salk Institute.
Discoveries by their nature are unexpected, right? And so I think the key is to recognize an unexpected result and then use, you know, expertise within the institute or maybe outside the institute to pursue new directions.